What up, everyone? So, I got a discussion video here that I want to talk about. The hot topic, Dragon Ball FighterZ. So I want to do a little bit of character speculation. I want to do a little bit of talking about the game. Also, what we'd like to see, what I'd like to see, what you guys would like to see. I want to get a discussion going, hear your guys' thoughts on a lot of these topics, and try to speculate what's going to happen with the little bit of knowledge that we have, and then just kind of talk about it from there. Things we'd like to see, things we're excited about, more stuff like that. So this video will be more of a discussion topic and less informational stuff, because we will be seeing a lot of information coming up. This game's going to be at EVO, and we're going to see some new characters there. It's also going to probably have some reveals at Comic-Con. There's a bunch of stuff coming up, and from what I've heard, we're going to be getting a demo at the end of summer. So probably right before Marvel vs. Capcom comes out. So I want to talk about a few things, and we'll talk about who we think is going to be in it, and other things like that. First thing to touch on would be Marvel vs. Capcom, because so many people relate the two games, so I feel like I should at least touch on the subject. And a lot of the commotion about Marvel vs. Capcom is that the hype is kind of dead on that game. And it really does seem like it. It's kind of the same thing I've always felt about it in the sense that there's been nothing to be excited about. I was excited they announced the game. Since then, there's not been one piece of information they've given to be excited about. So yeah, I think a lot of people's hopes are getting lost, and I think a lot of the hype has died off because it's been a few months since the original announcement trailer, and since then we've gotten new information, but none of it's been good. So I still have faith that the game will be good. I still think it'll be a decent game. I still think it'll be fun to play. It's just, I don't think it's very hyped right now, and I don't think it's going to be until after its release. So that's just kind of getting pushed aside, and Dragon Ball FighterZ has been kind of taking its place there. So, and that's kind of what it is. There's not much to be excited about for Marvel vs. Capcom until much later when we get all the cool DLC with X-Men and things like that. So yeah, it's kind of sad to see it just kind of go by the wayside. But, you know, it is what it is. They haven't given us things to be excited about, and that's just where it's going. So I thought I'd just touch on that. It's just like, it's the reality of the situation. It's sad to say, but, you know, it is what it is. So things I do want to talk about as far as Dragon Ball FighterZ. A lot of characters who we think is going to be in it, or who I think is going to be in it, who I'd like to see. And I'd like to know what you guys think about that too, what characters you'd like to see in the game. Before we even talk about that though, one thing I do want to talk about a little bit is one thing that's always been done different ways in different games is the transformations of characters. So everyone who's a fan of Dragon Ball knows that there's like a million different versions of a lot of the characters. Some of them change forms and some of them don't. Now, the Arc System company who's done Guilty Gear and things like that, they're kind of known for having smaller rosters. That's been the word around town, just based on what people think the amount of characters is going to be in this game. People are thinking it's going to be relatively small, because that's what they're kind of known for. They're known for giving character variety. They're known for having small roster. Now, I kind of agree with that, because that's their normal thing, but I also think just based on the fact that it is 3v3, that it will be bigger than their average roster. I don't think it's going to be huge by any means, because I don't know how much money they're investing into this, but I don't think it's going to be horribly small. I think it's just based on the fact that each person's picking 3 characters. I think that should give the roster a little more size. How much? Who's to say? But the other thing about character speculation in this game, it's a lot different than games like Marvel vs. Capcom, because you're limited on the number of characters there. Like Marvel vs. Capcom, there are just literally hundreds, if not thousands of characters to pick from, and they always throw in a curveball. Same with Smash Brothers. There's so many Nintendo characters, and they would always throw in one that surprises everyone. Dragon Ball, on the other hand, can't really do that. And the only way they could is if they revealed a new character that maybe hasn't come out in the show yet, which I don't think they would end up doing. So the characters that are going to be in the game really shouldn't be surprising to anyone, because we pretty much know, or people that are a fan of the series know pretty much every character there is. But like I was saying about transformations, Goku, for example, has like 6 or 7 different forms. Past games, they've done it differently, where there was the record for characters in a game, I think it was 118, and I'm pretty sure that was Dragon Ball, I think it was Tenkaichi 2, if I'm not mistaken. They had 118 characters, which is really impressive, but not so much when you realize that every transformation was its own character. So they had normal Goku, Super Saiyan 1, Super Saiyan 2, 3, so on and so forth. Each one was a separate playable character, which was cool. I liked that in a sense because you got to pick exactly the one you wanted, but at the same time it ended up being a lot of Shoto characters, a lot of duplicates and copycat characters and things like that. So it ended up just taking up a lot of space. Now, what the games before that have done is that you pick the base character and then the transformations are just power boost moves that you do throughout the game. Which again sounds okay, which we've already seen in Dragon Ball FighterZ once with Gold and Frieza, but for characters like Goku, it's just kind of a pain in the ass because nobody wants to level up like 4 or 5 times with one character before they get fighting. So again, I don't think they're going to do that either. And we've also already seen that the base character, at least for the Saiyans, they're already Super Saiyan. So they're not in their base form, so I think we can rule out that that's going to be the case. I think they will do that for characters that have just one transformation, or they're just going to do one, like Final Form Frieza to Golden Frieza. We've seen that as a power-up move, so we've seen that there. But as far as Goku, we see him go Super Saiyan 3 in one of his hyper combos, but that's just an animation. So the question is, like, what are they going to do with the other iterations of it? What I would like to see personally, and what they've never really done before, is if they just made those different transformation alternate skins. And for a lot of it, it wouldn't be that hard. Like the Super Saiyan version of Goku, we've seen in the demo, the different colors, they just change their suits, and which is fine for some of them, but a lot of them are just goofy colors that never existed in the series. I wish that instead of Super Saiyan, an alternate color could be like the Super Saiyan God version, because he looks exactly the same, his hair and eyes are just a different color. So that's what I'd more like to see. Not necessarily whole new characters for different transformations, not just power-up ones that uses your bar for transformations, and not just cinematic ones, but ones that are just different alternate skins. I like it if they did. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 did a really good job at this. When they did it, they did a lot of alternate colors for their characters, but every single color variation they did had something to do with where they came from, with the comic book series. So it didn't always look like the exact iteration from the comic book, but it always related to something. And they actually made an article about it. They went through every single character costume and showed where they got the idea for that. And that was really cool that they did that. So I hope they stay true to the series in that sense, and not just do random skin changes that look stupid, where they actually make it to make sense. And I think they will, because they are really good. So far, from what little we've seen, they're really good about staying true to the series. They take a lot from the manga, and they've done actual picture-by-picture comparisons where they've taken actual pictures from the manga and the original books and put it in the game. So they're pretty good about it. And we've also seen with, like, Cell, they did a blue version of Cell, which there was no blue version of Cell, but if you remember in the series, towards the end of the Cell saga, there were those little Cell Juniors, and they were blue. So that made sense. So it's like, okay, that makes sense that they would do that. So that's what I feel like they should do with some of the character transformations. So I hope they do that. And it's same with like Vegeta. All we've seen him in is his like Saiyan armor, but they can do him like with like the ones with the shoulder pads, maybe with the Scouter, and then he can be the Super Saiyan with like the God version with the blue hair. So I hope they do the transformations just alternate colors. And the ones that do actually are a transformation that change the shape too much, maybe they can keep those cinematic, and maybe those will be a power-up one. Just like we saw with Goku, his Super Saiyan 3 one, he's only that for a second, and then he transforms back after his super is done. So I think they're not going to be able to get to all the transformations. I think some of them are going to be lost. I'd be shocked if they didn't do at least one blue hair iteration as a costume change, but ones like Super Saiyan 3 versions, since there's so much hair, it might be hard to do that just as a color swap. And also like Super Saiyan 4, it's an entirely different skin change, so maybe they'll do that as like a bonus like DLC costume later, but those ones will be kind of harder to do. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. So I hope they do it as alternate colors, because I definitely don't think they're going to do separate characters for different transformations, and I don't think every character is going to have a power-up transformation. The good thing about the Arc System Company is that they are really good at giving characters variety, and that's what they said was one of their main focuses when they're picking characters and doing the character moves in the roster. So that's something we're going to keep in mind as we kind of speculate characters here. So let's actually get into some character speculation, talk about pretty much most of the characters that we've ever seen and what the likelihood is of them getting in. I know most people when they do roster speculations will put a certain amount up there and fill the spaces, which I personally think is a waste of time because we have no idea how many characters are going to be in there, so why limit ourselves? So let's just talk about all of them, the obvious ones, the less obvious ones, and again, who we'd like to see. Like I just said, their goal is to try and give the game variety. They're really good at that. So we can definitely expect to see some, not necessarily lesser known characters, but characters that haven't gotten a lot of love in the past. So also keep in mind that from the anime, like, power levels are going to be completely irrelevant. It's assuming that in this game everyone has the same power level, so there's not going to be any difference there. So everyone's going to be balanced. So that means that that does give some opportunity to some other characters that have kind of gotten pushed away. The first one I want to talk about is Tien. And he's one that kind of got lost in translation in Dragon Ball Z. He always made appearances here and there, but he was always there at the beginning of the fight, got his ass kicked, and then was like out for the rest of the series. So he didn't get a lot of love in there, but he has made a resurgence. He was in Resurrection F, and he did a lot of badass shit in there, and he's also in Dragon Ball Super now. So one of the creators of that's making the game said that was his favorite character. So I think without a doubt that Tien definitely will make it in, just because of he's now gaining new popularity. I think he was already popular before. I always thought he was a cool character, and he does have a lot of variety. He has a lot of moves that, like his Tri-Beam attack and things like that, that no other character has. So he has set himself aside in that sense. So I would say almost guaranteed that Tien is going to make it in there as a fully playable character. Now, aside him is Chaozu, and I doubt he'd make it in. He's a cool character too, but I'm kind of hoping that maybe he'll make it in as one of like Tien's special moves or something like that. Maybe a level 3 or something. Maybe he'll make an appearance, but I don't know if Chaozu would make it in by himself. I think he's just too small, and I don't think he's had enough moves or anything like that. I just thought I'd mention him because he's always Tien's buddy, but yeah, so I don't think he'll make it in. Next, as in for sure characters are going to make it in, Piccolo. There's not much argument there. I don't think anyone's ever going to doubt him not being in the game. The one thing I do hope is that I hope that when they do make his character, I want him to be in the full cape and headgear, and then maybe make him without that as an alternate skin, because we always see him without those, and I like it when he has the cape. I think it looks really cool with that, but most of the time you see him without it because he doesn't fight without it. So I hope they do that, or maybe do alternate skins where one he has and one he doesn't. But if they do make the character, I hope he has his cape on. I always liked it better with that. But yeah, Piccolo's an awesome character, one of the most popular. I've always liked him. He has special moves. He has his special beam cannon, and he also has moves where he can stretch his limbs, and I have a feeling they're going to make that a very prominent in his moveset, or I would like to think so, because that's something that no other character really has or has done a lot. So I think they can make that in his moveset, and that would make him like really cool and make him a lot different as far as the fighting system. So I think that'd be cool as well. Next, Krillin. I think Krillin is almost a shoo-in as well. He's a very popular character, and he's been in pretty much every series, pretty much every fight, and he has some special moves. We have already seen Frieza do the, man, I'm forgetting names. Of course, when I record a video, I'm always forgetting names of stuff. Destructo Disc. We've seen Frieza do the Destructo Disc in the moves already from what we've seen. That is Krillin's move. So I imagine he'll do the same, but maybe he'll do his as a different super or something like that. And Krillin also does his like solar flare and a few other things that he does pretty cool. So I think for sure he will be in there as well because he's just too popular. Me personally, Krillin's never been my favorite, but it's one of those characters where it would just be weird if he wasn't playable in there. So there's that. The other thing to talk about is fusion characters. Here's where I'm kind of iffy and I'm not really sure, and here's where you guys can weigh in and let me know your thoughts, because in the past games, fusion characters have been a lot like transformations. Sometimes they show up in weird special moves, and sometimes they're separate playable characters. In this one, I think if they did have them, like Gotenks, Gogeta, Vegito, if they did do those, I think they would make them completely separate characters. I don't think they're going to go through like in Budokai where you did a little fusion dance and brought them out. I don't think that would happen. So I think they have a possibility of making it in as separate characters, but here's the thing that I don't know if, like, for Gotenks, for example, if they did Gotenks, I don't know if they would do Goten and Trunks as additional playable characters. So I think that personally, I think Gotenks has a really good chance of making it in, but if he did, I don't think Goten and Trunks would both make it in. Now, I think Gotenks has a better chance than the two smaller characters because those characters would play very similar. Gotenks and Trunks would be about the same size, about the same power level. They'd have similar moves to each other, so I don't think that they would have two characters that are that similar when they could just do Gotenks, who has a completely different moveset. He has a lot of cool things that he's done, like that ghost attack that he does. I think that could really be a really cool super. But again, if they do put him in, I honestly hope they just do the regular Super Saiyan and not the Super Saiyan 3. Although if just playing devil's advocate, I'm pretty sure if they did, they would put the Super Saiyan 3 version in, but I hope they don't, because me personally, this is just me, I always hated the Super Saiyan 3 transformation. All the other transformations, loved them. I like the regular versions of characters. I like the Super Saiyan version, Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan 4, Super Saiyan God. I thought they're all cool, but I always hated Super Saiyan 3. I thought they looked so dumb with the long hair and no eyebrows. Like, why do they lose their eyebrows? That no other transformation does that, but for some reason, just that one, they lose their eyebrows, and they look so goofy. I've never liked it. So I hope if they do put Gotenks in, it's regular Super Saiyan, but most likely it would be Super Saiyan 3. So that's what I was saying. Gotenks, I would say, will make it. Goten and Trunks, not so much. Also, because of the fact that future adult Trunks is in there, and I don't know how many versions of the same character they're going to do. That being said, they do have Goku and Vegeta because they are they're the main characters, and a lot of people are requesting Vegito, and that's a really popular character. He was one of my favorites. He has a decent chance of making it in, but same with Gogeta. They both played such a very small part in the show. They were very popular characters, very cool, but they also were very, very short-lived. So I'm not too sure if they'll make it in because I don't totally remember the anime. It's been a while since I've watched it, but from what I remember, there wasn't a ton of stuff that they did very differently. They don't have like a whole different moveset, so I'm not totally sure if they'll end up making it in. They may just be an alternate skin, like just having that suit. If I had to pick one or the other, I would say Vegito would probably make it in over Gogeta, but I'm not totally sure. So I think Gotenks has the best chance as far as fusion because he has such a different moveset and he was a little more prominent. He did some cool moves, but Vegito and Gogeta, I don't think they have the best chance to make it in, but they do have some of a chance to make it in. And like I said about Gotenks and Small Trunks. Speaking about iterations of the same character, the next one I'll talk about is Gohan. So we have Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, Teen Gohan, which again I would argue is like the best version of Gohan. I think that's the coolest one. That was one of the coolest parts in the series. So I'm glad they have him in there as the Super Saiyan version. But that doesn't completely rule out another version of Gohan, which would be the adult version of Gohan. And a lot of people are saying the Ultimate Gohan, where there was a time when I think he had a sword for a while when he was with Elder Kai and things like that. And I believe they called him Ultimate Gohan when he had his full potential unlocked. So we may see a version of that. I don't think they would just do standard adult Gohan with just his normal gi like Goku has, because I think it would be too similar. But if they did do another version, I think they might do something like that, or I would hope they would, because he was different enough and he looked different enough, so that may be cool. Other than that, normal adult Gohan, I don't think would have a good chance. The other version I would think is if they did the Great Saiyan Man. He would be pretty cool because he would be totally different. He would have a different moveset. So maybe that may be the version of adult Gohan that we see. If not, I don't really see a high chance for just standard adult Gohan making it in because it would just be too similar, and I don't see that as a big chance for him making it in. So those are most of the main ones, the really obvious ones that have the most likelihood to go into the game. Now we're going to actually go through some other characters, some lesser known characters that haven't really seen a lot of attention, but may still have a good chance of making it in, just to give it some variety. In a previous game, we actually saw Bulma as a playable character. Personally, I don't think she'll make it in this one, but it's just something worth mentioning to put out there. She was in Super Dragon Ball Z. Terrible game, by the way. Awful. Had 18 characters in it. Completely horrible game. Yeah, so there's always, I'm just throwing it out there because there's always a chance that there's going to be a wild card, just to throw it in there and keep things interesting. So that's just something to put out there. The other one is Yamcha. Yamcha hasn't, again, he was the same as Tien. He was always at the beginning of the battles and always got his ass handed to him. He's a popular character, but I don't think his moveset is different enough where he would be interesting enough to put in there. And I don't think his popularity is super high. He has a decent chance of making it in because he is one of the original Z fighters, but I'm not sure. I wouldn't be super excited for him. I wouldn't be shocked if he made it in, but I don't know if I would. He does have his like wolf Fang attack, I think, is something like that. But that's about it, and I think he would play too similarly. And I think they're really trying to go for variety, so not a high chance, but I, again, wouldn't be shocked if he did make it in. Alright. Oh, another one, so another one that's almost for sure is Android 18. I'm pretty sure, I don't know how many androids they'll do. One thing to mention about this game, we don't know if they're going to stick to Dragon Ball Z. The name is Dragon Ball FighterZ with a capital Z, so that insinuates that they're going to stick to the Dragon Ball Z series, and so far it looks that way. So I think that's going to be their focus, but that doesn't mean that ones from the other series aren't going to make an appearance. I do think strongly they're going to focus heavily on Dragon Ball Z. I doubt any Dragon Ball characters will make it in, but I do think some Dragon Ball Super characters will make it in, but very limited ones. Not a lot of them, and I think GT is out too. I doubt we'll see any from there. We may see Super Saiyan 4, but again, doubtful. GT, I think, is off the table. So, that being said, Android 18 will make it. I'm not sure if Android 17 will make it in. I know he came back in GT, and he has made appearances since then, but I think he might be too similar to Android 18. I wouldn't be surprised if he made it in. Hopefully they could change it up, but at least one of the androids, but I think Android 18 has the most likelihood to make it in. As far as the other androids like 16, 19, and 20, I think they'd be really cool actually. I liked all those characters. And also like Super Android 13 or 11 and 12. There's a bunch of androids that were all very different from each other. So if they wanted variety, that actually wouldn't be a bad idea at all. I'm just not sure how many androids they want to put in. I'm honestly going to say one, maybe two, but I think they would be a lot of variety because 19 and 20 had the ability to absorb power. So I think that would be a really cool move for them. And they were both pretty cool characters, especially the one that was modeled after Dr. Gero. And Android 16 would be really cool too. He had a bunch of different movesets for things he could do, and he also had a self-destruct move, so he would be really cool as far as variety, but I'm not sure how much, what good chance they have as far as popularity. And again, they were only in for that one part of the series, so I'm not sure if the rest will, but I think Android 18 for sure. So let's go into some Dragon Ball Super characters that I think have a very high chance of making it in. One, Beerus. I would be baffled if Beerus did not make it in. I give him almost a 100% chance of making it in. He's extremely popular. He was the resurgence of Dragon Ball. He was in the movies. He's one of the main characters in Dragon Ball Super. And I think if they're going to put any Super characters, I think he'd be #1 choice. Number 2, Whis. I don't know if they will make him playable. I'm sure he will make an appearance in the game in some way or another. I love Whis. He's one of my favorite characters. I think he's really badass. I loved him in Resurrection F. I think he's just very cool and he would be fun to play as because he has that very calm demeanor, but he's also like really fast and he's pretty powerful too. I think he'd be really cool, but I don't know if he'd make it as a playable character. I think they might just have him as a supporting character or maybe in a story mode or something. But I would love it if Whis were in there, but I don't know if he will for sure. Another really popular character from Super and that most people think has a good chance of making it in is Hit. And he's been really popular as well. He has a very different moveset. I think he could throw in some variety there. But again, that's probably as far as I'd go because I think they're really going to limit the number of Dragon Ball Super characters that make it in. Because like I said, I think they're trying to focus on Dragon Ball Z. So if any from Super make it in, I think those would be the top 3. And from there, it's kind of iffy. Jocko was in Resurrection F. I think he'd be cool too. Maybe they'll throw in some variety and put him in. But again, pretty limited chance for that too. So those are the ones from Super. And let's see. Other characters that have a decent chance. So we've already seen Majin Buu. And as far as other iterations of a single character, I think another version of Buu has a pretty good chance of making it in. I was pretty surprised they even picked the Fat Buu at all, to be quite honest, because I never really liked that character, and he seems cool in the game, but I definitely think that they'll do another version, whether it's like the adult Tall Buu or the Kid Buu. I would lean towards Kid Buu, because I think each of them has a different enough moveset, and they're completely different sizes and shapes, so I think another one has a pretty decent chance of making it in, so I wouldn't be shocked about that at all. And if like I said, if I had to vote, I would say Kid Buu. And I like that version of Boo the best, and I don't like the fat Boo at all. So I think another version of that would be pretty likely as well. But yeah, other characters that have multiple transformations, we probably aren't going to see it all, like the other versions of Frieza, the other versions of Cell. It would be cool, but it would be too much trouble, and they'd play similarly even though they have a different shape. So I think that's one of the only characters that different form of them will be a different playable character if they make it in at all. That's just speculation. So there's that. Another character that a lot of people want, but I was never a fan of, is Hercule, Mr. Satan. I've never liked his character. I always thought he was such a stupid character, but a lot of people love him. He's an extremely popular character. I guess a lot of people just think he's funny, and I think he has a decent chance of making it. I think he will make it in, actually, and I honestly don't want him as a playable character. I think he'll be ridiculous, and I don't think he'll play very well. But I think he has a good chance just based on popularity. And he would be a lot different from the other fighters because he couldn't do ki blasts and stuff like that. So he'd probably be like a grappling fighter. He'd probably play like Zangief or Hagar from Marvel vs. Capcom. So he'd probably be a close-range character, probably pretty powerful, maybe a grappling character. But I hate to say it, but I think he has a very good chance of making it in. I would not be sad at all if he didn't make it as a playable character, but I honestly think he will. He was in a lot of Dragon Ball. He's in Dragon Ball Super. He's in some of the movies, and he's good friends with Boo, so I think he has a pretty decent chance. So yeah, I think he'll make it in too. And let's see, what other main ones? We've already seen Frieza, already seen Cell, Boo. Oh! One more from Dragon Ball Super I totally forgot to mention. Would be the other one, I should say 4, would be Goku Black. I think Goku Black has a really, really, really good chance of making it in, just because he would have a very different moveset, and he also looks different. I think the whole Super Saiyan Rose would be really cool as well, so I think he has a very high chance of making it in, not just as an alternate skin to Goku, but as an actual separate character. I think he's very likely to make it in from Dragon Ball Super, because he played a pretty important role in that, and I think he'd be really cool as well. So I think that's another one from Super that I think is very likely to make it in, and I think he has a good chance as well. Let's see. So this game is actually very similar. I don't know if you guys played... I think it was called Hyper Dragon Ball Z, which was fan-made. In that one, Babidi was a playable character. I don't think he will be in this, but maybe he'll show up in some way or another. And so I think the other ones I really thought were important. There's some earlier characters that have a chance to make it in, but I don't think so. Like Nappa and Raditz are very iconic characters, very recognizable. I'm not sure if they'd make it in, though. Also, like, supporting characters like the Ginyu Force, very recognizable, very cool characters, but I don't know if they'd make it either. If anyone was, it'd be Captain Ginyu, perhaps, but it's kind of hard to just pick one of, like, the Ginyu Force. So they have a small chance of making it in, because they do give some variety, and they were pretty popular characters. I'll put all of them in kind of the same group. They have, I'd say, less than a 50%, it's like 30-40% chance of one of them making it in. Probably not much higher than that. I think that's as high as I'd go for likelihood on those characters. I wouldn't be mad at all if they did make it in. I think they'd still be cool, but I wouldn't give it a lot of thought. So the last section I want to talk about, which I would really like if these next group of characters made it in, although very small chance of them making it in. And that would be movie characters. Ones that only appeared in a movie, which is mostly villains. Those are the only ones that only appeared in movies. The main characters were always there. Would be the movie characters. And I think the ones that, if any of them, the movie ones made it in, the ones that have the best chance, one, Broly. He was in 3 separate movies. He's a really popular character. He has a pretty different moveset. He'd be big, he'd be strong, he'd be slow. He's already a Super Saiyan. He obviously started out in that form, so I think he has a decent chance of making it in. Other than that would be Cooler. Cooler also has a very good chance of making it in. I think they could make him different enough from Frieza. I'd like to see the different versions of him. Like, obviously the metal one could be an alternate color, but I really liked in the Revenge of Cooler, the first movie, the one where he had the spikes on it and the little, like, mask over his face. I always liked that version of him. That's the version we never see. We always see the form after that, which is the one that looks more like Frieza. I think that one looks too much like Frieza. I think if they did the other version of him, it'd be cooler. No pun intended. It would be better. But, yeah, I think those are the only 2 movie characters that have the likeliest chance of making it in, and I think both of those would be fine. I really like Cooler. I think he's a pretty badass character. But I think he might look a little too similar to Frieza to make him for him to make it in. I guess it just kind of depends on how many character slots they have. And they haven't talked about DLC, but I have a feeling they're going to, because it's going to be really popular, it's going to sell well, and I think they have a good chance. There are a lot of other movie characters, though, that would be really cool, and I highly, highly doubt that any of them will make it in, but I just want to talk about them just to give them a shout out and just talk about how cool they are. But yeah, there's been tons of them over time, and like I said, Android 13, or Super Android 13, Android 11 and 12 from the same movie, all very different, and one of them even had like a really cool sword, I believe. And yeah, they were all just really cool characters. I think Super Android 13 would be badass, or like Bojack. Bojack and some of his little goons that he had, he'd be a cool character too. One of my favorite Dragon Ball movies ever was The World's Strongest. It's still one of my favorite to this day. And it was Dr. Willow and Dr. Cochin. Dr. Willow was the one in the big suit. I obviously don't think he can make it in. But he had those 3 androids that he built. Those guys were cool. They would be awesome because they all show that they had like really special moves just in that movie. And they would be awesome playable characters. Again, I doubt they would ever because they were only in the movie for a second and that's the only screen time they ever had. But that would give some really cool variety to the roster, and I think they'd be really cool. Again, pretty much no chance of making it in. I just thought they were cool. And all the movies had characters like that. Every single movie that came out. The only one that came from the movie into the series was Garlic Jr. And again, he would be fine too, but highly doubt it. And the same with like Tree of Might, like Turles and those guys, or even the short series like they had Bardock. Bardock, if any of them were going to make it in, I'd say Bardock has a decent chance. I think he's a pretty cool character that's gained some popularity. They definitely have to work on his moveset to make him interesting enough. Bardock has a pretty decent chance, but because he has a different look and everything like that. So he may have a chance in it, but a lot of those other ones, like I said, Turles and ones from the Dead Zone and other things like that. There were always a lot of characters in those that were very different, that were very kind of cool and special, and would have a very different moveset. So you never know. Like I said, every game that I've ever seen, they always throw in at least one curveball where it's a character that no one ever expects. When they do Super Smash Brothers, it's always a retro character, like they did Duck Hunt Dog, or they did Ice Climbers. Like, it was one that no one would have ever guessed that would have been in there, but ended up being a pretty cool character. And the same with Marvel vs. Capcom. They did really obscure characters to try to promote their own stuff. Like, they did MODOK, and they did, at the time, Rocket Raccoon, who was practically unknown, because that was before Guardians of the Galaxy. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do throw some kind of curveball and put in a character that nobody expected. And like I said, maybe it'll be one of those from the movie that have kind of been forgotten over time. That's not one of the main Z fighters. That's not one of the main villains that just made an appearance at some point just to keep things interesting. So that's just, that's kind of like a slot or two left over just for a wild card, just to keep things interesting. And it may be someone, like I said, like Bulma. Where that was a playable character before that they may just have a really cool moveset. Or someone like that. Or Chi-Chi, or other things like that. So they may make them something like that. So there's always a spot for a wild card. So that's most of the speculation. I know I don't have an exact science to it, but I mostly just want to talk about likelihood. So the characters I mentioned first, I think are definitely a shoo-in, will definitely make it in some form. After that, there's a decent likelihood. It just depends on how much room they have in the roster. If we had an exact amount of how much they were going to put in, I could say almost exactly which ones would make it and which ones wouldn't. So that's why I don't give exact numbers. I just give likelihood. I just give percentage chance that those characters are going to make it in. And if I missed anyone, I'm sure I did. I'm sure I've missed someone super obvious that people are going to yell at me in the comments for. Please let me know. And again, let me know what you guys think. Which characters will you like to see? Do you agree or disagree? Do you agree on the likelihood of some characters? Do you disagree? Some are definitely going to make it in that I haven't mentioned, or some that aren't that I did mention. Let's talk about it. Let's get a discussion going, and also what you'd like to see. Like I said about the character variations, the variations of skin colors, or putting transformations as completely separate characters. But keep in mind, they have said they do want to keep variety here, so they are going to try and spread it out and keep characters as different as possible. and we can't go crazy on the roster size either. So let me know what you guys thought about that, and we'll talk about it in the comments and get a good discussion going. So I appreciate all of you who have weighed in on my videos. A lot of you bring up really cool topics, and I like to talk to you about it in the comments. So please, let's keep that going, and let's keep the discussion going. And feel free to say anything. No comment is stupid. Don't feel like your opinion isn't heard. Just as the only thing I ever ask is just be nice in the comments to each other. But yeah, always throw something out there, because you never know. You may throw out something that none of us have ever thought of before. So feel free to do that in the comments. So until then, I'll probably do another updated video after EVO. We know we're going to have Trunks in that build of the game. That's been confirmed already that he will be playable at EVO, which is in another like week and a half or something like that. And we'll probably see at least one more character, if not more. So we can revisit this at that time and then just keep revisiting it after each announcement, and we'll talk more in between. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this gave you something to think about, and we'll do more unboxings and more reviews in the meantime. Thank you all for watching. Love you all. Peace.